Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming. I am Karl Merck, co-director of FARI AI for the Common Good Institute here in Brussels. I'm delighted to have this session today on Quebec and Canada's active AI ecosystems, an inspiring example for Europe and Belgium. I want to thank all the panelists of today, and we will present them in a short amount of time. With my colleague, Laurence Renaud, we organized this event also to try to highlight and share a bit of our experience where we both lived and worked in Quebec in the AI scene. The goal of this session is really to see how this country and its province managed to be in the top 10 of the best places in the world of AI, according to the Turtis Global Index. This session, I want to say, is not sponsored. It's not a blind promotion. We do not have anything to sell, but there is no one size fits all for all countries. And so we don't pretend that what Canada and Quebec did could work everywhere else. We just really want to highlight some of the really interesting initiatives and strategies that were implemented there. It really aims at looking at the lessons learned by these two entities. And in the previous session, co-organized with the AI for Belgium and the Embassy of Canada to Belgium and Luxembourg, the researcher Avi Goldfarb said, really, the first thing that countries need to do when implementing nationwide strategies and trying to be proactive in terms of AI is to maybe start with your strength, where your excellence lies. And I really like these words because they remind that Canada had strength that they were able to identify, Quebec had strength that they were able to identify and bet on. So today, let's look at their efforts, strategies. Let's also hear about the way forward, what needs to be done, could have been done differently. And finally, let's look at existing mechanisms of collaboration that are already in place. Laurence, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Karl. I am Laurence Renaud, Strategy and EDI collaborator in FARI. A few words about our institute before the presentation. FARI was born from a royal visit to Montreal in 2018 with major players such as MILA and Ivado. And in a nutshell, FARI is an independent, not-for-profit artificial intelligence initiative created by the two leading universities in Brussels, the Vrije Universiteit Brussels and the Université Libre de Bruxelles. This unique organization aims at helping citizens, politicians, public, private, and not-for-profit organizations to address local, everyday, or long-term problems insofar as AI can contribute. I now give the floor to Michel Gartland and Gert de Bove, who will introduce you the long-term vision of AI in Canada.
Merci, Laurence. Hi, my name is Michelle Gartland, and I'm the commercial counselor here at the Canadian Embassy in Brussels, covering Belgium and Luxembourg. Just to quickly let you know about what it is that we do over here at the Embassy is we help connect Canadian and Belgium AI companies. Specifically, we're talking about AI today. We help connect them to collaborate. We also look at supporting Belgian companies who are looking to get a footprint in North America. We are your collaborators and partners and can help you get there. So let me just change this for a second. Okay. So I wanted to just quickly set the scene to tell you a little bit about Canada and AI before we take a deeper dive into the province of Quebec, who is going to be talking about their great innovations and ecosystem they have set up. So while I don't have the time to give you an update on what's been happening in Canada over the last 30 years, I can tell you that because of the investments that the Canadian government has made, or the luck, the variance of machine learning has really enabled Canada to become a global leader in AI development. Those investments that they made over that period of 30 years really scaled up the research funding and attracted some of the leading AI pioneers in Canada. So here I just have an image, and they will be known to everybody in AI. Richard Sutton at the University of Alberta, Jeffrey Hinton in Toronto, and Yoshua Bengio in Montreal. So over the years, these Canadian AI godfathers really nurtured the top talent in Canada. And they created a wealth of students, attracted wealth of students and postdocs who wanted to learn from the best. and benefit from the specialized curriculum that these universities were building. At the same time, the Canadian government didn't stop investing. So in 2017, we were the first country to launch a national AI strategy. So 125 million was put into that. And that was the world's first national AI strategy. And then in 21-22, another 443 million was invested committed over a 10-year period to further build the AI ecosystem in Canada. So what has that resulted in? Well, a vibrant, burgeoning startup ecosystem across Canada, anchored by some of the world's best and leading AI institutes, AMI in Alberta, the Vector Institute in Toronto, and MILA in Montreal, and a thriving talent scene. And so I'll ask my colleague Geert to take us a bit deeper into those last three areas about our ecosystem. Over to you, Geert.
Thank you very much, Michelle. So I'm Geert de Boever, Senior Investment Officer with the Embassy of Canada in Brussels. And I support Belgian and Luxembourg companies in their journey of establishing or expanding their business and organization in Canada. Canada is a global business and investment destination thanks to an attractive mix of valuable ingredients, which includes global market access through 14 free trade agreements, the fact that the country has the best business costs in the G7, the presence of innovation hubs, which include, among others, the 5 tech superclusters, which were created a couple of years ago. And I will come back on some of those superclusters. But that leads to a very vibrant innovation ecosystem across the country in those strategic areas. And last but not least, there's this wealth of talent in Canada with a very diverse and highly educated workforce. So if you look at the Canadian AI ecosystem, there are the 3 national AI labs, which were mentioned by Michelle. So on the West Coast, you have the Alberta Machine Intelligence Institute in Edmonton, you have the Vector Institute in Toronto, and then you have the Montreal Institute for Learning Algorithms, MILA, in Montreal, which is headed by Dr. Joshua Benjo. And at the same time, you have the Digital Technology Supercluster, which is based in Vancouver, Next Generation Manufacturing Supercluster located in Ontario. And in Quebec, we have also the Scale AI Supercluster. And that Scale AI Supercluster is dedicated to building the next generation supply chain. Those 3 research institutes that are mentioned here, they do not only have a research mandate, but they also have a very strong conversion to industrial practice mandate. And I'm sure that we will hear a bit more of that when we have our Quebec and Bologna and Brussels people talking about the Quebec AI ecosystem. So starting with 3 pioneers, that's a magnet of talent being developed, and also a magnet for capital being developed to create a very rich ecosystem. And these are just a few numbers to show you what has happened since this pan-Canadian AI strategy was created in 2017. And you see that more than 1,200 graduate students have come out of the 3 institutes. There's really hundreds of industrial partnerships being created at those AI institutes. And then you have, global organizations that decide to put their AI R&D labs in Canada. And that's the case, for example, for Microsoft, Samsung, Google, and many more. So here you can see that, in fact, in the business landscape of AI in Canada, you will find foreign multinationals, you will find large Canadian companies like Shopify, and then you will have hundreds of startups like Darwin AI, which is mentioned here. So what does a vibrant startup scene look like? Well, here are some numbers. So since 2010, so over a period of 10 years, we have, just from the 4 provinces that are highlighted here, we have something like 700 startups being created, with Ontario being the biggest province in the country, already responsible for 400, but you see in Quebec and British Columbia, the numbers are also very significant. What also explains this vibrant startup scene is, of course, the presence of incubators, accelerators. And I would just like to drop one name there, the name of Creative Destruction Lab, which is headquartered in Toronto, but which has offices in Toronto, in Montreal, in Vancouver, in Seattle, in the meanwhile also in Oxford and Paris in Europe. And they have been a tremendous motor for getting those startups up to speed. And I will conclude here by saying and inviting you to consider Canada really as a partner and as an entry door to North America. We are here to support you, and you will find here our details. And over to you, Carl.
Thank you very much. While Alexander Vika from the Technique will let Benoit Mack in, I had a first question for you, Michel and Geert. So right now, if a Brussels company wants to do business with a Canadian entity, specifically in AI, they just have to go to you and ask you how to proceed then for the way forward. Or
that's right. No, that's right. We have a network of partners, and Adrian is on this call as well. And he would be one of those partners that we would work with. Between the two of us, we would find the right connections, partners, resources to help onboard those companies. As I always like to say it, I may not be the right door, but I'll get you to that right door. And it may be Adrian and vice versa for Adrian. A Canadian company may approach him and it may be me, but, feel free to use us as the windows into each other. We'll make sure that we can connect you with the right people or programs that can help you.
Perfect. And I had another question. I think you can feel it in academia that there is this Canadian and Quebec attraction where a lot of people really want to go to Canada, work in Canada. Is it something that you can also feel on your side as well?
Do you want to take that one, Geert?
Yes, well, I've joined 11 months ago, and of course, we know the pandemic was still fully there. Nevertheless, it was really possible to reach out both to existing investors as well as companies that are not yet established in North America. And I must say that I was really amazed at the level of interest. And if I just look at the level of activity today, I can only confirm indeed that Canada is being discovered by Belgian and Luxembourg companies as a future destination for doing business, not just in Canada, but also as a gate towards North America.
Okay. Thank you very much again, Michel and Geert. And I have the pleasure of welcoming Benoit Mack, professor at the UC Louvain and also head of TRAIL, the Wallonia initiative to unify the AI scene specifically towards an industrial goal. And we wanted to ask him to say a few words maybe on his own experience, because he is a prime example of Belgians, European academic who had an academic stay in Canada and then took back some ideas, some impressions. And the same way for Fari, that was created after a visit to Canada. I think maybe, Benoit, you have things to say about what happened for TRAIL and for your own experience.
Yeah, so I was mainly involved in my past life in medical imaging, in creating startup, and I've been also vice president of my university. And so I decided after this very active period to stop everything and to go for 1 year in Canada. And I was there an invited professor at McGill University, and I was working close to Joël Pinault, who is one of the key researchers in MILA. And so I lived during 1 year in Canada, in Montreal, in this landscape, and I was very positively impressed. So I still took some activity in the field of medical imaging. So I visited, for example, the Centre Hospitalier Universitaire de Montréal, CHUM. I visited also, I was connected to McGill neuro institute where there is a lot of activity in medical science, which is connected to AI. But I was also authorized to follow all the seminars in the MILA center. So I lived during the year where the MILA was constituted. All the teams from McGill went together with the team from Polytech Montréal. They went together in the same place, and I liked this constitution. It was very exciting for me to go there because you can meet the best researcher in the world. So all the people, all the good people crossing Canada are going to Montreal to meet Joshua, to meet Joël Pinault, to meet Donia, and they are there. They give seminars. So if you want to have the most up-to-date information, go there. So MILA is very selective to admit people to stay there. But I had the chance to be in McGill with one of my previous PhD, who is now one of the vice president of McGill. And so I was very well welcomed there, and I was connected thanks to Adrien Céleste, who is here in the room with us, and with many other people to connect. And it was indeed a very great chance for me to live there during 1 year. And Trail was inspired from MILA, indeed, how they did the things, how they connect in the same place several universities, how they create a place where young startups can interact with researchers, and also how to grab the most up-to-date information related to AI. So it's a very exciting place to spend a sabbatical year like I did it, and I encourage all the colleagues to spend 1 year in McGill or in MILA or in Polytech Montréal. A very nice school also is ETS, École Technique Supérieure. I don't remember exactly the name. They are excellent engineering school there. There are excellent medical research in Montreal, and the life in Montreal is also very cool. You have jazz music in the summer, so you can enjoy the life on a cultural aspect, and you can also go along the Saint Laurent River and see many nice things. So it's a nice place to be, and a nice place to boost your knowledge and to boost what's happening in the AI field.
And Benoit, could you say a little bit more about Trail, and also what you were able to take from Quebec and what you saw in Canada, and what you think was not possible to import or emulate?
So I think MILA was an inspiration, but we are smaller. So the idea to bring together university is a success of MILA. So in MILA, you see Polytech Montréal, you see McGill, you see different universities which are set in a unique place. So putting in Trail all the researchers in a unique place is not possible. So we decided to keep all the researchers in the same place and to create a virtual institute. I was very impressed by the high level of research in MILA, but maybe the connection with the industry and the connection with startups and companies could be done differently. And we did it differently here in Belgium, in Trail. We focus on grand challenges, which are linking a lot of companies in Wallonia with researchers in our lab. And we did it slightly differently, I assume. What we do similarly to MILA is to do an intensive use of open source. MILA is very focused on open source, use of Docker for containing and for easy transfer of knowledge to company or to the medical field. They use containers like Docker. They have an intensive use of open source approach, which is also very relevant for what we do in Trail. So we have been inspired with many aspects, but we have a different landscape. We have less means. We are smaller, and we need to target more directly on the economy. We have a little bit less freedom than the team of Joshua Benjo, who is a big star, and people let him to do his own way. We have to produce maybe more concrete result in a shorter term than what he is able to do.
Okay. Thank you very much, Benoit, for your time, and also for showing us what was possible to import and what was not possible to import. These are very different contexts. So thank you again. And to learn more about the Quebec context, I invite now Anne Boilly. She's Performance Director of the Quebec AI Ecosystem at Forum IA Québec. Forum IA Québec is an initiative that she will talk more about in depth, but it will show you a little bit what has been done in the past years and what could be done in the future, could have been done differently. The floor is yours, Anne.
Thank you. So I'll just share my screen. All right. Can you see?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to make it full screen. Okay, here we go. So thank you for inviting us to talk about the Quebec AI ecosystem. Thank you, Fari, AI for Belgium. This is an honor, and thank you also for everybody who gave a bit of context about Canada first and work in Quebec. So just in a few minutes, I'm going to try and give you a glimpse of our ecosystem here in Quebec, how it was built, and what's the road ahead. So in order to do that, I'm going to start by introducing the Forum IA Québec and what's our mission, and then a little glance back at how the ecosystem was built here in Quebec. And then some of our results, the results of studies that were conducted in the fall of 2021 that give us an idea of our investments and their impact, and then some ways forward to strengthen our ecosystem, what are our challenges and opportunities. I'm going to go pretty fast because there's a lot of content for only 20 minutes, but feel free, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to discuss them afterwards. All right, so the Forum IA Québec was born in 2020, so it's a pretty recent organization. It's a non-for-profit organization that was created by the government of Quebec in order to use AI as a lever of economic and social development for the province. And so we have three main goals. We want to encourage collaboration among all the actors of AI in Quebec, actors in the research sphere, but also in business, financial actors, support actors, and obviously government stakeholders. We also have a purpose of strategic thinking in order to make sure that we're aware of the best practices that are being used elsewhere in Canada and in the world in order to learn from the best and continue to thrive, and also try to promote and expand our own ecosystem in Quebec, Canada, and abroad. So now I'm just gonna walk you through a little bit some of the elements of how our AI ecosystem was built since 2017, roughly. That was hinted at a little before by the presentation of my Canadian colleagues and also Professor Mack, that we have key actors in the research sector, world-renowned researchers that work in cutting-edge research in Montreal and in Quebec. So some of the names that you have here. Also very crucial are applied and fundamental research centers that help transfer innovation from academia to industry. And also always our concern here in Quebec was to develop AI for the common good, responsible AI. So that is always something that will be on the back of our minds and will be implemented into the research and the transfer that we try to do. So a quick glance at some of these research centers. First one that was talked about, especially by Professor Mack, is the MILA, which is the result of a collaboration between different universities, including McGill and Polytechnique Montréal, and gathers now today some 700 researchers and does work with different industrial and community partners in order to implement AI innovation into their either their supply chain or their business models or their products. This week, MILA has announced a partnership with Twitter as well. We also have IVADO, the Institute for Data Valorization. So another institute to promote collaboration between academia and industry. So we're talking here different scientists at different levels that try to help transfer in data science and AI into different organizations of society, that they be academic or industrial, and even international partners as well. So those two organizations are located in Montreal, MILA and Ivado. Now moving to Quebec City, we have the OBVIA, which is, well, it actually stands for International Observatory of the Societal Impacts of AI and Digital Technologies. So it's a research center, an international research center that looks into the different challenges that AI brings and how to implement responsible AI, ethical AI in different axes, be it in law, in health, and different sectors of the economy and of society, and to make sure that we maximize social justice, for example. And also in Quebec City, the Institute Intelligence and Data, with also a fair number of researchers and projects in industry and different areas of the industry. So that's a quick glance of some of the main actors that helped constitute and develop the AI ecosystem as we know it now. Of course, other than research, there are other important key elements of growth if we want to support a thriving ecosystem. So public investments are important, that they be federal in Quebec or provincial from the province, the government of the province itself. Importance of a strong talent pool that was hinted by her a little earlier. Also in terms of talent, one thing to keep in mind is we need talent for now, but we also need talent for the future. So investing in future talent will be one of our challenges. Quebec also has tailor-made financial incentives for AI projects and different actors to accompany AI startups. For example, specialized venture capital organizations that can help different startups. And of course, keeping our focus on AI for the common good. So now I'm gonna look into some of the results we had from the studies that we asked for at the forum last fall. So the first one is that we asked Turtis, the British firm, to measure the performance of Quebec through the indicators of its global AI index that you're probably familiar with. I know Alexandra Mousavizadeh was presenting the index this week. So it's actually the most comprehensive in this field, and it lists 62 countries. Quebec is the first non-country to have done the exercise. And one thing that's really important to keep in mind when we want to understand how Turtis, its global AI index works, is that out of the 143 indicators, a fair share of them are proportional to population. So that means a lot of metrics are per capita, which does not disadvantage smaller countries or smaller populations. However, another share of the index is calculated through intensity metrics. So it does disadvantage smaller nations. And so that's one thing to keep in mind when we want to include a region of the world or a country on the index, always keeping that element in mind. I'm just gonna go through very quickly the index pillars so that we have an idea of what does Turtis measure and how accurate it is. So the 143 indicators are divided into those 7 pillars. We're talking talent, so practitioners of AI in the public and the private sector. Infrastructure, so we're talking here a lot of basic infrastructure that makes more specific infrastructure available. So electricity, internet access, but especially supercomputing capabilities. So for example, the number of supercomputers that rank in the top 500 will be included in that. The operating environment, so the public sphere perception of AI will be measured there, as well as some indicators like visa access and the speed of visa processing will be in there as well. Research, of course, researchers and their impact in the research world. Development, so here we're talking open source, contribution to researchers of the region or the country to open source platforms such as GitHub. The government strategy is, of course, looked into its content, also how early it was launched. So it was mentioned earlier, but yes, Canada was the first. So of course it gets like a very good score on that pillar. And in the commercial pillar, we have businesses, so AI companies and startups, their number, and also how that their funding and the investments made into them. So Quebec ranked 7th in the world back in November 2021, which was very impressive for both us and Turtis as well. Of course, you can see that well ahead are the United States and China, and then there's a significant gap between them and the cluster of leaders. The UK was in 3rd, and in Canada still at the 4th position. So Turtis has told us that Quebec has this lead against many countries, including ones that are double our size, which is very encouraging for us. And we also have potential to grow further, but there are challenges. Of course, the whole picture isn't rosy, so we need to look more into our challenges and our strengths. So if we look at the distribution of how we rank on the different pillars, of course, on research, we're very, very good. This is one of the factors that we're internationally known for because of the leading figures that were mentioned earlier. So especially here in Quebec, Yoshua Bengio. And we ranked 5th, which is ahead of Canada as a whole, which for us was very impressive and telling that Quebec does push Canada in its 4th position in a significant way. Government strategy and commercial are pretty strong as well. Where work needs to start being done is in talent and development. So of course we do have a talent pool, but some of the indicators, and I'm gonna show you a little later, need to be worked on within talent. Operating environment, of course, everything that touches into trust of AI, we're pretty, we need to improve there, and infrastructure. So I'm gonna give you a bit more precise metrics for you to see where we stand and what are strong points and challenges for our ecosystem. So Quebec does stand out in the number of average academic citations. We ranked 1st in the world, 3rd in the world for AI spending as a proportion to GDP, and also in the top 5 worlds for average funding of AI companies. We're talking here public and private funding, so that includes venture capital. And while the AI strategy, we ranked in the top 10, so we're very happy about that. But what are areas for improvements? Well, of course, supercomputers. If my memory is correct, I think we only had 2 supercomputers that listed in the top 500, and one of them is brand new. So there needs to be more work done there, but also supercomputing power made available for SMEs will be something that we need to look into that and that we're cogitating here at the forum. Also, the number of STEM researchers is important, as these researchers could easily migrate into the AI field in terms of upskilling, and our ranking is not so good there. Also, for the number of data engineers, we're ranking pretty low as opposed to AI engineers as calculated on social media and more specifically LinkedIn. So of course, those metrics and the methodology could be discussed, but this is something we want to keep in mind. AI startups funding is also a challenge. We're very good in the funding of AI companies in general, or more grown-up companies. But when it comes to AI funding of startups, this is something that we really need to work on. And we had a significant drop since 2020 that we're still trying to understand using data from Turtis. And also public distrust for AI is a big challenge for Quebec and also Canada as a whole. As an Ipsos poll showed earlier this year, there's up to 55% of Canadians that do not trust AI. So there's a lot of education work to be done here in the country, and specifically also in Quebec. So Turtis had recommendations that will come as no surprise for us. I'm going to go very quickly. Of course, increase the talent pool, augmenting funding in the context that other countries are increasing their own funding and their own investments a lot quicker than we are doing. So if we want to keep up within the race, this is important. And here we're talking also private funding, not just public funding, but also venture capital, for example, more suitable infrastructure, and maybe having a fresh look into our AI strategy, given the fact that the 12 recommendations that we had put forward were mostly honored. So maybe that's the time to start setting new goals and tracking them as well. So I'm going to go very quickly into PWC Canada, which is that was one of the studies we also ordered in the last fall in order to understand what were the socioeconomic impacts of the public and private investments that had been made in the last 5 years, so 2017 to 2021, and also what would a greater adoption of AI allow us to look or to hope for in the coming years, the coming 15 years. So there are 3 components to the PWC Canada study of the Quebec AI ecosystem. I'm not going to give the detail right now just because of lack of time, and it's very big actually, but the full reports are on our website, so I could give the links very easily. They're easily accessible online, a shorter version of the report as well as a longer one. But basically what PWC provided us with is an estimate of what were the static economic impacts of the investments in the last 5 years. What can we foresee with a prospective analysis of a greater productivity gain that would be permitted by a greater AI adoption in all industrial sectors between 2021 and 2035. So you'll understand that this was done with modeling. And a more qualitative aspect of what can AI bring to 2 very specific industrial sectors. And excuse me, there's a small typo on the slide here, but we're talking here the manufacturing sector as well as the health sector. At the forum, part of our role is to track those private investments, those public investments, and understand what were their impact, because this will help us redirect our strategies. And one thing that we're seeing very strongly with this analysis and other feedback we're getting from the ecosystem is that AI adoption is the next challenge. We're very strong in research, but AI adoption in businesses across all industrial sectors is still at a low level of 6%, which is comparable to AI adoption as a whole in the United States, according to some studies, for example, that of Bryn Jolson and his team. However, one thing that is very specific to us here in Quebec and is a real challenge when it comes to AI adoption is that when we look into the States, the companies that adopt AI a lot more quickly are the big firms, and Quebec's economy is made up of a very large portion of SMEs. So that will be a challenge for us. And that is actually where we're centering most of our efforts at the forum. And talking about that, there is the Vitrine IA Québec coming up that will be released shortly and within, I think 2 or 3 weeks, that my colleague Sarah, she's the director of adoption, is working on. And this will be a showcase of AI in Quebec for the international, as well as for, well, all the actors here in Canada and Quebec. And within that showcase will include case studies of successful AI adoption so that other businesses and companies can see how they can get inspiration and tools in order to adopt AI themselves. And we're also going to provide them with different tools, such as an adopter's path and an AI maturity evaluation tool, as well as other tools that are coming up, very exciting ones that will be included in the next iterations of the showcase. And here's some numbers of the third aspect of the analysis of PWC Canada in terms of the impact of AI adoption in the 2 industrial sectors we had targeted. So in the health sector as well as the manufacturing sector. Very interesting also in the context of pandemic to measure what AI can bring into the health sector, and specifically for Quebec, where we have a labor shortage, which is one of our economical challenges. Of course, measuring what our automation can do is very helpful for us. So in the last 2 minutes, I just want to give you a quick glance of what are ways forward to strengthen the ecosystem. What are we working on? Well, of course, coordinating programs to support AI adoption. That was part of the strategy or of the reflection of the forum earlier this year and last year. We're trying to come up with very concrete tools to help businesses adopt AI, starting from very broad problems and accompany them until they get very, very specific, very niche. And this is something that is a big project right now, and will get more concrete and is already being worked on in the agri-food industry. So we have a pilot program being done in that field, and we're hoping to enlarge it to other industrial sectors as well. Of course, I mentioned it earlier, we want to invest in talent. We just launched what we call our Chantier Talent, which is a big working group in talent, mobilizing also partners from our ecosystem in order to launch new projects to form, attract, and understand what are the needs in talent for businesses as well as for students. And also, of course, improving our infrastructure, keeping in mind also our goals of a responsible AI. We have the great luck in Quebec to have renewable clean energy, and some of our AI and data projects are using or are being conducted trying to use clean energy. And yeah, so I could talk more about that later, but this is something that we're very excited about also for the future. So those are broadly our challenges and opportunity. We know we're very strong in research, but we want to pursue and increase academic industrial collaboration. Our main challenge is adoption. We want to increase that significantly and provide businesses with the means that they need in order to do that, and also keep working in collaboration. That is crucial in order to understand the needs of the sector and collaborate with different institutions in Canada and abroad. Thank you very much. And if you have any questions later on, I'll be happy to discuss.
Thank you very much, Anne, for this super interesting talk. And I think it gave, even for some of the viewers that I know who are in Quebec, a very interesting view on their own province with the information that they did not know about. So kudos for that. Now we will, for time's sake, go first to Adrien and then take the questions at the end. So Adrien, the floor is yours. Adrien Céleste from the Fédération Wallonie-Bruxelles International, Science and Technology Coordinator or Counselor, sorry if I said that wrong. We'll talk about what are the existing mechanisms that exist between a European country, Belgium, and its region of Wallonia, with the Quebec and Canada. What is possible to do and how to inspire each other, and also establish structural relationships in science and technology. So Adrien, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Carl, and all the organizers for inviting us today. And if you didn't know it already, with the presentation of Anne Boilly just before, indeed Quebec and Canada in general are definitely on the world map regarding AI, research in AI, but more in general regarding research and development. Hence my presence here in Montreal. So I head the Science and Technology Liaison Office for Wallonia-Brussels International here in Canada. Just a quick word of Wallonia-Brussels for those of you who may not know. I know there are also non-Belgian participants from the EU or Canada. We are the agency of the Wallonia-Brussels Federation and the Walloon region, actually to support our international strategy. So in very short, it's more or less the French-speaking part of Belgium, so southern region, and also all the francophones with Brussels. Research and innovation is really at the core, a core element of our international strategy, which is why it was decided back in 2010 to actually set up science and technology liaison offices in specific countries. This was decided in close collaboration actually with our universities, research centers, and research clusters as well. So these countries, and especially Canada, are not put here by chance. They're the result of a close consultation, with an ongoing consultation actually with our partners, to make sure that we are in the countries that matter for our entrepreneurs and researchers, and that we can actually help them support their projects. So the Canadian office was set up back in 2015, and I've been in beautiful Montreal for the last 4 years myself. So based with local partners, that also the specificity of our system. So I'm based in the Quartier de l'Innovation of Montreal, so right in the center of Montreal, and working very closely with our local partners to support collaborations. Why Canada in general, why Quebec in particular? Well, that was mentioned by Anne Boilly for AI, but it's true for research in general. Research excellence is the central element of our decision to actually set up an SNT office abroad. Obviously, another element is the actually already existing network of collaborations between our companies and researchers with their counterparts. And for this, in Quebec in particular, it was very clear that our universities especially were working very closely with their counterparts here. So we wanted to build on this and to have them even further. And last element is actually the convergence in our research and innovation priorities. AI is one of them, and digital and green transitions are as well. And I must say this aligns quite well with between Wallonia, Brussels, and Quebec, but also more in general between the EU and Canada. So we have an SNT roadmap between Canada and the EU, and our strategies actually do align quite well. Being a European region, and if there are other EU regions present here today, we do have a smart specialization strategy. So we work on the international stage on these priorities. These priorities are laid out here. I won't go into detail, but they are represented by a research cluster. So we work closely as well with the super clusters that were mentioned by my colleague before. So for all these sectors, AI does play a very key role. So Professor Benoit Mack, who was with us for a few months here in Montreal, for instance, AI applied to health. Well, we work very closely together with Professor Mack, with the BioWind cluster to set a partnership with the CHUM, with other research partners in Quebec, but that's just one of the examples I could give you, but I won't go into too much detail because the main point is really to lay out how we work and how we can support you, researchers, entrepreneurs based in French-speaking Belgium, to set up partnership with Canadian counterparts and vice versa as well. So what do we do? And that was mentioned by Michel Gartland a bit before. We are here to connect you with the right counterpart. So if you're a researcher in Canada, an entrepreneur, or in French-speaking Belgium, well, we are here at your disposal to help you find the right door, the right person, the right contact to put your research project or your R&D project basically into place. So we are the gateway, I would say, and I won't detail all the elements here, but basically here to support you in your endeavors. Very concretely, because when I had a chat with Carl before the session, that's what was expected of me. A few examples of how practically how we work with you and we can help you. Well, for instance, we noticed with our partners that Quebec universities and Quebec and French-speaking Belgium universities were already working very well together, but there was no specific co-funding mechanism, program to actually develop R&D projects together. So with the Quebec Research Funds, led by the Chief Scientist of Quebec here, Rémi Quirion, and our research funds, the Fonds National de la Recherche Scientifique, head by Véronique Alloin, we decided back in 2016 to set up a dedicated co-funding mechanism between Quebec and Fédération Wallonie-Bruxelles to support these bilateral programs. We've had 2 calls already. There's a third one on the way. As you can see here, about $3.6 million for this 2020 call. So we're going to fund about at least 6 projects to really support bilateral relations between Quebec and French-speaking Belgium. But it doesn't stop here. Obviously, we collaborate very strongly with, well, the Canadian Embassy in Brussels, the Delegation of Quebec as well in Brussels, the ministries at the provincial and federal level here, the EU delegation that is in Ottawa. How do we work together? Well, we are actually here to support researchers and companies to set up projects. So we use every means at our disposal. So for instance, the Horizon Europe program, so EU's flagship R&D program, is an important element a key element actually to fund multilateral projects between Canada and EU partners. So there are co-funding mechanisms here at the Quebec level, but also at the federal level with the different funding agencies. Well, my role with colleagues from the different ministries is actually help guide you, find the right funding opportunities, and also find the right partners for these calls, be they in Quebec, Ontario, British Columbia. We work together and help you guide through this. Another important element that is often forgotten about is the European partnership programs, the so-called ERANETs. Here as well, the Walloon region is part of them, but we have co-funding mechanisms from Quebec and Canada as well. So especially in health, in personalized medicine, for instance, there are about a bit more than 10 European partnership programs with co-funding opportunities here in Canada and Quebec. It's often not very well known, but it's a very important way of actually supporting R&D projects between both sides of the Atlantic. And last but not least, Eureka Eurostars. It's led by the National Research Centers here in Canada, funding more close to the market research opportunities. And here as well, we work very well with our Canadian counterparts to actually set up multilateral projects between Canada, Belgium, Wallonia, and other EU countries as well. And a last example I wanted to mention, we do have, we do encourage high-level researchers' mobility between Canada and Wallonia, Brussels. We have general programs in place, to support this. But there was a strong demand from both Canadian counterparts and our universities to actually go a step further to support these PhD and postdoc partnerships. So we decided to set up back in 2019, just before the pandemic hit, unfortunately, this collaboration with MITEX, which is the leading agency here to support researchers' mobility. So this mobility is underway, and now we have dedicated calls for proposals, support mechanism to encourage our researchers from Canada to come to Wallonia, Brussels, and from Wallonia, Brussels to come to Canada to undertake their research. So that was in a nutshell, basically what we do. We work very well with Quebec. Here you have the Belgian and the Quebec flags, because you could actually put the Canadian flag, the Wallonia, Brussels flag. Basically, we work very well together already. There are very strong partnerships between our universities, research centers. It's also the case for the companies. I work very closely with the Trade Commissioner of Wallonia here in Montreal, and we have a few Walloon companies based here. One is actually in Quebec City using AI for the snow removal system. So we are slowly getting out of the winter here, but I can tell you this is an essential service. So that's a Walloon company using AI, working with Quebec City to actually undertake this and manage with AI this snow removal system. But yeah, basically at your disposal. And as Michel said before, we will help you find the right person, the right contact, or the right program across the Atlantic to undertake your project. So very happy to be with you today. Any questions, feel free to ask. And thanks again for having us. Thank you, Carl, and all the organizing committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So for the last minutes we have, I wanted to maybe ask a question to you, Adrien, and then Anne as well, and then involve the others as well. But I've often said to Michel in a few times we met, but that we got a lot of questions in the academia about Quebec. So my colleague Laurence and myself get asked a lot of questions about how do the labs, how did they do it? How are they structured? How can we collaborate with Quebec? But I was curious to hear from you, Adrien, and then also from you, Anne, first. What are the type of questions that you get the most often, the most frequently? What are the types of interrogations that people have towards collaborating with Quebec?
I'd say on my side, the number one question is usually, I have a project idea. I don't know how to fund it. Can you help me find the right funding tools? That's the number one question, I'd say. And the number two is usually, I have some project ideas. I had some contacts in Quebec or in Canada in general, but I want to make sure these are the right partners to actually undertake the project. So then they contact us or the delegation, the Quebec delegation in Brussels or the Canadian embassy to basically, and I think we get the same questions unless I'm mistaken, but yeah, make sure that they have the right partners. And if not, trying to have a better perspective of academic or entrepreneurial partnerships here and see how we can actually maybe broaden a little bit their project partnerships. So that's usually the two types of questions that I get the most.
Okay, thank you. And you have also a shout out from Benoit saying you can trust Adrien, he's a top guy. So bravo. Anne, maybe also, what type of questions do you get most about Quebec?
Well, I would go in the same line as Adrien, because we do get questions like that. I think some people hear about Quebec and they hear about some actors, but they don't have a full vision of the whole ecosystem, which makes sense because there are a lot of actors and it's not super obvious. So of course, this is something we're trying to work on to make sure that we redirect people to the right sources and that they have a global view of who's who and who does what in the ecosystem, who's a research actor, who's a transfer actor, who's a financial actor. So yeah, I would say it's very similar to what Adrien is saying, yeah.
Thank you very much. So we'll go to Benoit and then the final words with our partners from the Canadian Embassy, Michel and here. So Benoit, during your stay and also after your stay and after the Trail Initiative, what questions do you get the most about Quebec and what do you think is still needed in terms of information?
I think maybe we could establish a network of people. There are a lot of Belgians in Montreal who are professors there, who are researchers there. And I think we could use our alumni network to increase the knowledge between the people and to make more exchanges. I think the things are working well when people know personally somebody there. And the entry point is often a personal relationship between two people, which allow to create new venues. So if I would advocate something, is maybe to Adrien or other people to continue to work on this network of anciens Belges, old Belgian guys who are now becoming Canadians. And there are quite a lot, especially in Quebec, with very welcoming Belgians. We are, in fact, in Quebec, you feel like in Wallonia. Belgian, we are a small French country and Quebec is also like a French country in a big ocean of English world. And I think we feel good in Quebec and we can establish good personal relationships there. And if people need contacts, do not hesitate to knock the door of people who knows very well Quebec. I think to Hugues Bersini in ULB is traveling a lot in Canada. I can give some links also. I think personal links are very useful and should be promoted.
Thank you very much. Maybe the final words to you, Michel, or here, about also the Belgo-Canadian chapter or what we could do.
Thanks, Carl, and thanks to the fellow panelists. And I absolutely agree with Professor Mack that those relationships are key to establishing the collaboration and the connections going forward. And we do the same here. We find out, it's one of the first things I do when I land in a foreign country is find the Canadian expats. They are the ones who are deeply embedded in here in Belgium. They know they work in various industries and they are willing through their own volunteering time to help other Canadian companies. So that rich Belgian ecosystem is definitely key to tap into in Quebec. And I've seen some of it in other provinces. They'll be very willing to take on and mentor those other Belgians who are coming into Canada. Sorry, go ahead, Carl.
No, please go ahead. You have 20 seconds.
Yeah. So just thanks, and we're here to help you collaborate and connect, and messages heard. We will continue to build these relationships, so please keep connected to AI for Belgium, to Carl. We will start to roll out some of these sessions to dedicated verticals this year. So getting into healthcare, to manufacturing, to start to bring together those researchers, the academics, the companies to take these discussions further and deeper. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Michel. So a warm thank you to everybody, Anne, Michel, Gert, Benoit, Adrien, Laurence, Alexander also for the technique. And we will put all the information on our website, and this event will also be accessible on YouTube as soon as it ends, and you can share it. So thanks again very much, and I wish you a wonderful day.